Hi, Simon. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, you were very excited about gold investment. I see that you've been doing a bit of a media tour, spreading your message, and you've written a new book, which is very exciting. This is your second book on gold. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get right to it. We already know who you are, unless you want to give a little brief recap as to what your expertise is, and then move on to the book. How about that?
Yeah, that'd be great. I
All
mean,
right.
my background is very traditional, sort of MBA, investment banking, property. And Many years ago, even though property has been very kind to me, I kind of, looking to the future, and I wanted to find an asset class that I thought was more exciting in terms of the future than perhaps the past. And Even though property, is a great asset class, I think someone once said to me, "Never fall in love with something that can't love you back," and I think that's very relevant for property. And so I kind of thought, well, let's have a look at another asset class, and everything pointed towards gold.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, gold's been around for a very long time, and people should just naturally gravitate towards it for investment. But have you seen a decline of people thinking about gold as an investment? And is that part of your message?
Well, no, actually, funny enough, the contrary. I mean, it's funny that gold is used in our everyday language. You say a child's been as good as gold. You don't want that person to marry a gold digger. People go for the gold medal at the various Olympics and these
Mhm.
other events. It's kind of used literally in our everyday language. But then if you turn around to someone and say, "Do you have any?" Um, in the vast majority of cases, and I'm talking about 99%, I'm not talking, over 50, they kind of give you this blank look and say, well, no, I don't. And That's really what this book is about, because I want people um, to at least kind of think about it.
How does the Beginner's Guide to Investing in Gold differ from your first book?
Well, I mean, what I'm trying to do is get people to just kind of understand the basics of investing in gold. And I kind of, gold's been around for thousands of years. It's not some sort of new fad like crypto and some of the other stuff out there. And The whole idea of this is to really kind of introduce people to gold as an asset class. And as I just said, a lot of people, even though it's well known to pretty much everyone, and I think it's one of the few what I'd describe as global sort of assets. You can take gold anywhere in the world and it's viewed as valuable. Um, Very few people seem to have it. So the whole idea of the book is to kind of give people at least a sort of basic understanding of what it is, and how it may be able to help them.
Mhm. Being that gold is an asset, if a lot of people started investing in gold, would that change the value of gold? I don't really know much about investment, but if people started listening to what you're saying and they say, I'm going to go buy some gold, and you get a lot of people doing it, does that change how the direction gold is going in?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's one of the things I like about gold, to be honest, is you can't print it. And so, the actual demand supply economics, stacks up very well. So, the supply remains the same. So if demand goes up, the price goes up. And I think that's, if you look at what central banks are doing, for example, the demand of central banks has increased significantly. And so they can't change the supply, and the price has been going up. Now, I'm not saying it's just central banks. I think there's a lot of interest in gold, but um, I think it's a really interesting asset class.
hmm hmm Now, we live in a world currently, this is 2024 when we're recording this. There's all sorts of threats going around, and people, waving their military about and invading other countries. I think we know what we're talking about. Does that play a role in the price of gold? Is that one of the reasons this is a good time to buy because the world is having some trouble?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons for buying gold, to be honest. people are worried about inflation, and they're perhaps thinking of it as an inflation hedge. It's viewed as a safe haven asset. So, if people are buying it because they're perhaps worried about buying assets elsewhere in the world. And so, yes, no, I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons, but I don't think it's the only reason.
Okay.
I think, as I said earlier, you can't print it. And I think that a lot of people are looking at stuff that is portable that can't be printed and thinking, well, perhaps I'll have a bit of that.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, is the post-pandemic world part of that problem too? If some countries are having a hard time getting back in their economy, does gold play a role in that?
Yeah, well, I think it plays a role, but it's not sort of the role, if you know what I
Right.
mean. It's I think that people are, perhaps looking beyond more traditional asset classes, and I view uh, an asset class really as a pillar of investing. And if you have a roof on a property, a lot of people have got, let's say, property, equities, and bonds.
Okay.
Um, that's three pillars, but I'd like to have four pillars at least. And so I'm not saying don't have one of those. I'm saying I would add another pillar uh, to your kind of structure, so to speak.
Well, since the last time we talked and you were saying basically the same ideas, obviously you're very much into the idea of people should invest in gold as an asset. Have you noticed changes in people's investment practices that they're investing more in gold, or you just felt the need to hammer it down and write a second book and really get people to understand that this is an important thing?
I think when I first started, I assumed that there was also already a lot of knowledge, and I think that was a mistake, to be honest. I think a lot of people, they know about gold in theory, but they've got no idea of it in practice. And the idea of this book is really to kind of take them back to basics. And even though I think it's useful for people who've got an understanding about gold, um, there's also an element of perhaps looking in the rear view mirror for some people and seeing why gold is valuable, and it just, I don't know, having a better look under the bonnet of gold as an asset class.
Hmm. Yeah. Reminds me of a friend of mine who started investing in gold in the early 80s. Today he's a very wealthy man, and gold wasn't the only way that he became wealthy, but I'm sure it helped him gain wealth to invest in other things and so forth. It becomes like a domino effect, I guess, if you're building your wealth.
No, exactly, and I think it's some people say, oh, the price is high, but if you look at gold in the late 70s, early 80s, the price at the moment could actually be pretty cheap. And I think the other thing I'd say is, uh, gold's one of the few assets you can hand down from one generation to another. And if you've got any sort of relatives who give you gold, you're not going to complain about it.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a relative of my wife's here who panned for gold. Apparently in Nova Scotia, if you know where to go, you can find some gold. When he passed away, there was about $18,000 worth of gold tucked away in one of his I don't know, cupboards there, and so that was a surprise to everyone. Yeah, gold is a nice thing. I'm wearing gold right now. I think I've been wearing gold for decades, and I
Well,
don't even think
exactly.
about it.
Gold's very symbolic. It's used at weddings and throughout your life. If you're given something that's made of gold, it's not only valuable from chances are it's expensive, but also it has a lot of sentimental value as well.
Hmm. Yeah, friend of mine, and then he gets fillings now. He's the same age as I am. He has gold fillings. And I thought, well, it's kind of a pompous thing to do. He says, no, 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 no. In case things go wrong in the future, and go, wow, you're going to pull out the fillings of your teeth to buy
It's
yourself some food. I guess let's hope it doesn't come to that.
if you look at what happened in the Second World War, I think a lot of people
Hmm.
lost their teeth because they had gold fillings in,
Yeah,
um, and so gold is it's definitely viewed as valuable.
yeah, of course it is. Of course. Now, you contacted me very excitedly about you need to get on this show as quickly as possible, and we're going to get this on YouTube right away almost, because now is the time, you say, that people need to take a look at gold. Explain to us what the big excitement is all about.
Well, I think the big excitement really is, and it's a strange thing to say, but it's been around for thousands of years, but people just don't know anything about it. And I think that perhaps one of the reasons is their financial advisors probably don't know much about it. And uh, if you're told equities, bonds, property, that's what you do. And it kind of makes me smile a bit that people work unbelievably hard to make money. And then as soon as they've made it, they kind of like just pass it on to someone to manage it for them. And part of the structure of this book is to actually try and help people ask the right questions to their financial advisor to make sure that they are getting the kind of advice that they want, and everything is in their own best interest rather than in the financial advisor's best interest. So I think that's one of the reasons for the excitement from my perspective. That people have got an opportunity here to broaden their portfolios, and it could be a very timely thing to do.
Hmm. Right. I'm one of those people. I started with my investments through my work in my early 30s, and they just took off a certain amount of money from my paycheck and all the way into my 60s. And then I had a sort of small nest egg, I suppose. Maybe it could have been bigger if I took more control of it. Can you advise a person who's really taking an interest in what you're saying, and but they don't know what to do? Of course, they'll order your book and perhaps you explain it in the book, but can you explain here now what their next step is? Do they go into their bank and say, I'd like to invest in gold, and the bank takes over that? Or what's the best way to buy gold?
Well, I think that your question is brilliant because it kind of shows what people typically say. And there are so many different ways you can get involved in the gold market that people just are completely unaware of. And, a lot of people go, well, I don't want to have physical gold. I don't want gold lying around the house. You don't have to do that. You don't have to buy physical gold. You could buy lots of different types of gold. You could buy ETFs or company shares, and there's lots of different companies. You've got some that are producing, some that are developing, some that are exploring. And I'd say to anyone who wants to get involved in it, what you need to understand really at the outset is, what do you want to achieve from this? And for example, my daughter's school fees, I put into physical gold because I don't want something that's going to move around too much. And so I'd rather take a lower risk on that money. And then there's other money which I put into other companies, and some are lower risk and some are explorers. They're very high risk. And what I love about the explorers is, if you get a good result, like I did with a company called Chalice, it went up about 65 times. So the results can be life changing if you get it right. But I think what I'd say to people is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yes, it's great to have some that if they take off, you can make an awful lot of money. But investing is not all about that. Investing is about having a diverse base and different companies, different. I'd also say different commodities, different currencies. You can get a very broad asset base with a relatively modest investment, and that kind of sets you up for the future. In property terms, it's a bit like if you buy a house, you want the foundations and the wall to be strong, and then you start thinking about the curtains and the decoration. And I'd say it's the same with gold. You want to start off with the basics and get a decent foundation, get walls and roof, and the basics before you start looking at some of the riskier stuff. And
Hmm.
that's what I urge people to do.
I'm reminded of when my mother was alive and she was a senior citizen. She got, concerned about the limited funds that she was having to live on. And she looked around her jewelry and she found all kinds of gold in there, obviously, as she collected the various things through her life. And then she saw commercials on the television, bring your gold down here, we'll give you money for your cash for your gold. and she did that, and she was happy getting $60, $80 here, and but obviously that's not the investment in gold, but that shows you that people do think about gold when they're thinking about the need for money. How does a person who's young and is upwardly mobile, has got a good job, how do they go about shifting their ideas away from stocks and bonds into diversing their portfolio and buying gold? I know this sounds like a question I've asked before. Does your book help train the mind of someone who's in a position to invest to open up their ideas and have gold as part of their portfolio?
No, absolutely. I mean, what I do is I try and give them all the options and uh, help them think about what option is suitable for them. For example, if someone is younger, then they may want to have a bit more risk because, you know, if they're lucky and they get a chalice or something, you know, that could be the deposit for a house or something. Um, but you need time. You know, it's a bit like buying an option. Um, if you've got a company and you've got time uh, before you need the money, that's a great position to be in. You know, for someone like myself, you know, I've helped my father and others invest. Um, I, whilst I do like to have, you know, the old company where if things take off, it could be really exciting. You've made a lot of money. Um, as I've got older, I use a fancy football format, so you've got forwards, midfielders, defenders, and goalkeepers, and all that sort of stuff. But which I talk about in my book. But I've become far less aggressive with my approach to investing, and you know, I would urge people to sort of follow that sort of approach because, you know, as I said earlier, you know, you want the foundations right um, before you know you need to have the structure of your investment in place before you start looking at some of the riskier stuff. And it may be the riskier stuff isn't for you, and if it isn't, fine. You know, just invest in the lower risk stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. From what your research has shown you, has gold gone up and down through the decades? And if so, how are the downturns of gold compared to the rising price of gold?
Well, I mean, obviously gold goes up and down like anything, but one thing I have kind of noticed is that as debt goes up, and I'm yet to hear a convincing argument that debt's going to come down, over the longer term, you know, debt always seems to go up, it doesn't seem to come down, whereas the gold price obviously does go up and down. But over the longer term, uh, you know, I'm talking about sort of 10 years, the gold price tends to follow the debt sort of increase. So I would certainly want to have, you know, some money in more boring, you know, physical gold and things like that. But um, it's with debt increasing and, you know, geopolitical stuff that you were talking about and, you know, other things. Um, I think that having at least some gold in your portfolio makes sense.
There's talk on on Wall Street in America that it's breaking records how well it's doing. And of course, there's some critics saying it's not. But facts speak for themselves. The economy of the United States is getting better. Has gold played a role in that, or how do you view this?
Well, I mean, you know, going back to my point earlier, you know, gold tends to follow the debt line, and debt has been going up a lot, and you know, particularly, you know, post COVID and things like that. And so, you know, if you put more money into the system, i.e., debt, you know, printing money, the system is going to do better. And so, I think that gold is a contributing factor to that. I mean, there's talk of interest rate cuts and things like that. And, you know, I think if that happens, um, you know, people will look at gold perhaps a bit more closely than they have done in the past. But you know, the whole purpose of this is that people look at it, and I want people to consider it. And that's why, for pretty much the price of a coffee, in fact, probably less than the price of a coffee, you can get this book and read it. And I'd urge people to obviously to do that. And if at the end of it you decide gold's not for you, then you're perfectly entitled to have that view. But I want people to at least think about it, and that's the whole purpose of the book.
Right. Well, my show is sort of international. I do speak to people all around the world. You're in the UK, I'm in Canada. Most of the people I speak to are in the United States. But the question I want to ask is this book and your ideas about gold, is it truly universal? Like, can people, not to say that they're going to buy books in Kyrgyzstan or some obscure countries in Africa, but would it work there too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the beauties of gold. It's one of the few global assets. I if I sort of said, oh, buy a book on property, property is very relevant to the country you've written it in. And there's certain parts of New York or certain parts of London where property is a lot more expensive. But what I love about gold is it's a global asset, and whether someone buys it in, I've actually got a following in the US and in Australia and other places around the world, and what I talk about is just as relevant there as it is here.
Mhm. Okay. Well, earlier I tried to find your book on Amazon, and then we spoke in the pre-chat, and you said the book is so new that it perhaps isn't showing up there yet. It will eventually be on Amazon, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to put it on Amazon,
Okay.
but as I say, it's sort of hot off the press, and
Yeah.
I kind of I really wanted to speak to you as soon as I could about it. So, but yeah, no, I'll get it on Amazon, and if people want to look at it in the meantime, then if they just go to www.goldprogram.co.uk, you can get it there. And funny enough, on there, I've also got a bunch of free newsletters and free reports. So even if you don't want to part with any money, but just want to find out more about gold, you
Well,
can do
good.
that.
Is it available in ebook?
Yeah, at the moment it's just an ebook,
Okay.
um, and at some point I'll do a print run. But to be honest, what I tend to find is when people buy it, um, if there's anything they don't understand or is not clear, then it's a great opportunity to tweak it before you start putting it in print.
Right.
But I
Hmm.
think people find it
Good
useful.
point. Good point. Okay, just before we wrap up, I'm going to put you into full frame, and you're going to give your best pitch for why people should buy your book.
Thanks. Well, look, you should buy the book because, first of all, it doesn't cost much money, very little money indeed compared to what it could save you and how it could help you. And gold it's an asset that's been around for thousands of years. So it's not something that's new, and it's something that you should know about, and you probably don't. So if you don't, more reason to buy it.
Good. Well, Simon, it's a pleasure to have you on, just like last time you were here. And certainly anytime you write more books about gold, you look me up and we'll talk more about gold. It's a fascinating subject. I thank you for being a guest on the show.
That's great. Really enjoyed it as always. Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you for watching. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment. You can also subscribe and ring that bell because I release 2 episodes per week, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays. And if you are an author, I would love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.